Hi, I'm Jeff Walters, and welcome to The Minutes. And thanks for listening today. It's great to have you along on The Minutes for the week of June the 3rd, 2024. This is a City of Thunder Bay podcast. The Minutes takes a look at what happened at Thunder Bay City Council this past week. You can find The Minutes wherever you get your podcasts, including our YouTube channel and our website, thunderbay.ca/The Minutes. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening at City Hall, make sure you hit that subscribe button. On the episode this week, we'll have a rundown of what happened at this week's City Council meeting and an interview with Cory Halvorsen about outdoor rinks in Thunder Bay. We're many months away from outdoor rinks. We have to get through summer first, but we'll hear why ice was the hot topic at Council this week. Council, though, started its meeting quite late this week, as Council was in closed session until about 8 p.m. There were actually 4 deputations scheduled for Monday night, but the first was cancelled due to that late start of Council. The Port of Thunder Bay was slated to make a deputation, but it will be rescheduled for a later date. The second deputation on the agenda was changing how non-profit recreational sports teams are charged to use community centres. The presentation was made after a group representing the South Neebing, North End, and Current River community centres found it was being charged $100 per team to use the community centres' fields. The group says that the fee isn't sustainable and maintenance to the fields is non-existent. Council referred the matter to administration to report back on potential options for fee changes or waiving the fees. There was another deputation made by Ken Shields, urging Council to follow the Transportation Master Plan and prioritize projects to determine when certain infrastructure, like the Carrick Street cycling bridge, could be built. Shields noted how the bridge concept has been around since 2018, but no firm work schedule has been presented to get the project built since then. The bridge, though, is slated to be built in 2026, but Shields has concerns after the project has been delayed in the past. There was also another deputation from Shane Judge regarding last week's decision to approve a design-build RFP for the indoor turf facility. Judge asked Council to consider a public-private partnership to build the facility. He said there would be a more cost-effective way to build and operate the facility and not have the taxpayer pay for the entire building. Council also had some items that were presented in closed session, including having the Fort William Gardens operated as a licensed facility and a lease with the Tournament Centre. Council voted to proceed as directed with both of those items. Council also voted to enter into a lease for a new location for the Provincial Offences Court. That's due to the demolition of Victoriaville. The new location will be at 1265 Arthur Street East, and that's at the Arthur Street Medical Centre. Council approved surplusing a number of properties on Monday night. The list came to Council after a request was made by Council for administration to look at properties that could be considered for housing. They included lots on Grey Crescent, Birchwood Avenue, Woodside Street, road allowances on Bruce Street and Minot Street, as well as on Hodder Avenue. There were some properties, though, removed from that surplus list, and that includes parkettes on Thistle Crescent, Holly Crescent, and Thornlow Drive. The surplusing of the properties is subject to ratification. That will take place on June the 24th. And Council discussed at some length some information that was presented on Monday night. The city's housing study was presented, which was to make sure that the city has a housing supply to last the next couple of decades. The study looked at future population growth and potential locations for housing, as well as demand for housing. It was written by a consulting firm, HTFC Planning and Design. The study says that Thunder Bay has some of the oldest housing stock in Canada, with nearly 40% of all homes in Thunder Bay built before 1961. It also says that the amount of construction in the city needs to increase. The study found there is sufficient land for housing in Thunder Bay, but it says densification should also be considered and the urban growth area should not be expanded. There was no decision on the housing study, as it was for information only. Naden Contracting was awarded a $3 million contract to repave a number of city streets on Monday night. The contract is to repave parts of Balmoral Street between Cameron Street and the Neebing-McIntyre floodway. A new multi-purpose trail will also be built on the east side of Balmoral. Other work includes redoing the City Road and James Street South intersection and adding a right turn lane at that intersection. A water main on D Street will also be looped, and that will help improve water quality. Council heard on Monday about the usage of outdoor rinks over the 2023-24 season. Although the season was shortened due to warm temperatures throughout the winter, there was an increase in usage. In the fall, Council voted to close 8 rinks and downgrade rinks at 3 parks. Due to the shortened season, there were also fewer usage counts as the skating season was shortened by a third. On an average per-hour basis, supervised boarded rinks had about 7 users, while rinks at community centres had about 3 users per hour. Nearly 40 people per hour used the rink at the waterfront. Now, all of the supervised rinks, with the exception of the waterfront site, West Thunder Community Centre and North End Rec Centre, fell below the city's target number of skaters. Sites that are boarded but not supervised that met the city's targets include Dease Park, County Park, John Jumbo Community Centre, Oliver Road Community Centre, Parkdale Park, Stanley Park, and Waddington Park. A review of the outdoor rink program and any changes for the upcoming winter will be proposed to Council this September. Council also passed a resolution from Councillor Greg Johnson regarding the future of outdoor rinks. Johnson asked administration to look into alternative options to natural ice that's currently found in parks throughout the winter. This includes using synthetic ice, refrigeration systems, covered rinks, concrete pads, or outdoor rink hubs. The list of recommendations will come back to Council in December. We'll hear more about outdoor rinks when I speak with Cory Halvorsen, the manager of Parks and Open Spaces, in just a couple of minutes. Council ratified its decision from last week to proceed with the indoor turf facility. The vote allows administration to proceed with a design-build RFP for the proposed facility. Administration will then come back to Council with information once all of the bids are received and ranked. There was an attempt at Council to have the vote deferred to June 24th, but that deferral was lost. If you want to learn more about the proposed facility, just check out last week's episode of The Minutes. And finally, Council got an update on Monday night on the solid waste management strategy based on what was achieved in 2023 and what can be accomplished in 2024. Administration says it will issue an expression of interest and request for proposal for the proposed green bin program. This would be to process the material that would be picked up at the curb. The report also notes that the city's first autocart truck will be delivered in 2025, which will be able to collect garbage and green bin items at the same time. A route assessment will be underway this year to find problematic areas for that future autocart program. The city will also have a tender issued for the actual garbage and green bins as well. Now this year, administration says it's on track for a new provincial recycling system to take over Blue Box Recycling. This includes the creation of a new curbside pickup program, which will start on July 1st. A third leaf and yard waste pickup date will also be implemented this fall to help reduce the amount of organics going to the landfill. Overall, the amount of garbage being generated and sent to landfill is decreasing year over year, while the amount of recyclables is increasing. And that's a wrap as to what happened at Council this week. For more information on anything that happens at Council, please visit our website, thunderbay.ca/council. Well, it's definitely a cool subject for the summer. Outdoor rinks, a point of pride for many in Thunder Bay. Just how many we have and how often they're used. But there may be some changes coming to outdoor rinks in Thunder Bay, such as where they're located and how they're constructed. Maybe not just ice anymore. Cory Halvorsen is the manager of Parks and Open Spaces in Thunder Bay. Cory, thanks for coming into the Minutes studio today.
You're welcome.
So lots of chatter about outdoor rinks starting kind of last fall when some closures were proposed, I guess. What's kind of happened since then?
Yeah, so we operated through the winter with the reduced program, and we had a pretty interesting winter with the warm temperatures. So we learned a lot about what the impacts are going to be if we have winters that have those increased temperatures. And subsequent to the winter season, we were asked to report back in June on the user statistics for the previous winter. So that was what the memo was that went to Council this week. And yeah, basically it shows how they fared in comparison to previous years and how they compare essentially to each other at the different levels.
So on an overall, reading the memo, it looks like we actually had a decent usage, saying that, it wasn't really much of a winter.
Exactly. We would have liked to have seen the numbers go up, considering we reduced the number of sites. However, it was a unique winter, so it was pleased to see that people still came out and utilized them, even though, they had to wait a bit longer for them to be in service and had to deal with interruptions throughout the winter based on the warm temps.
You said that we learned something about, essentially having to work with warmer temperatures. What were some of the challenges that your crews faced?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge was getting the initial base level of ice sufficient to support opening. So typically we don't have an issue doing that in December to be prepared to have the majority of the sites ready by the Christmas break. But this year we weren't able to do that. It was just too warm. So what we learned was that we can continue, and there's value to continue flooding as aggressive as possible in December, even when the forecast doesn't look like it's going to support, continuation of ice development. I think that was a big one that we learned, because on the sites where we did that, it didn't really get impacted in December by the warm days. It just slowed us down. We might not flood if it was a warm day, but you didn't lose what you had done. It just would refreeze as soon as the next cold day came. So that was something we hadn't really gone through before. Typically, once you get into December and start flooding, it goes uninterrupted. This time it was, and the sites where we just continued and didn't look at the forecast, just kept going, fared better. Then they had more ice built up at the base level, and then that helped through January and February, and even into at the end of the season, they were able to sustain the impacts of a few warm days here and there.
So yeah, I guess it resulted in a longer skating season that we would have even seen if we didn't do that.
Well, all of the sites were impacted to a certain extent through January and February, because there were warm days there as well. And any sites that had just the bare minimum of the base level ice had to be closed, and the other sites didn't see the same level of impact.
If we talk about usage for a moment, I guess what have we kind of seen for usage over the past year, and comparators to the couple years before that?
Yeah, so each level of rink category has a different target. I could say in general, though, over the last 10 to 15 years, the majority of the sites have been below target levels, each to varying degrees. So last year was, again, marginally better, a little bit of increase in user levels in all of the sites, I think, except one. There were some outliers, so the Prince Arthur's Landing did extremely well last winter. Again, that's where the refrigeration really paid off. We had very minimal impacts. We did have a few days, but they were more near the end of the season, so that provided a consistent quality ice surface from the beginning of December right into March. Not as far into March as we had wanted, but it was still the numbers showed it. I think the percentage increase there was significant. The Vickers skating trail outperformed the previous opening year, so that was a good sign. Again, in the same situation with those temperatures, to see that skating trail able to perform was actually very good. That was an unknown. We weren't sure how that was going to fare in a really warm season like that. So those were two real positives that kind of jump out for numbers. But I think the reductions that had been applied to the rink program were very helpful for this past winter. We had fewer sites that we were trying to, get through the warm temperature operating season. So that, I think, that helped us open what we could as soon as we could. But target level wise, there wasn't a lot of standouts. The odd one here and there that maybe had a jump. The rest were fairly stable or slightly better.
Yeah, and I guess part of it too was that the idea of reducing the sites was so that staff weren't spread so thin between so many rinks. Exactly.
It's about service level and working with the capacity that we have, and which means a certain number of people, a certain number of crews, and they can only be in one place at a time. So elimination of the ponds was a big one, again, because they provided the lowest level of service at the sites that we do ponds at, but they still require a significant amount of effort to create them and maintain them. So having fewer of those means fewer sites, and we can focus on the remaining, and again, getting them ready as early as possible, maintaining them more frequently throughout the winter through snow events, flooding them more frequently so that building that ice up. So that really, I believe that really did help us, again, avoid seeing us, falling back in the numbers. I think we likely would have seen the numbers decline if we hadn't reduced the size.
And I know coming up this December, there's also a resolution that was passed last night from Councillor Johnson to look into some alternatives to ice, I guess, essentially, or changes how we could do things. What would that kind of mean for Rinks in Thunder Bay?
Yeah, so right now I really look at that as essentially a planning exercise to sort of look outside of our current system. What other options are there to provide the service level of skating within the community that could possibly be resilient to warmer temperatures in the winter. Each of them are going to have either a financial component and or a different operating regime that we would have to understand and be prepared to put the efforts in to be successful with that. So synthetic ice is one that was a bit of an unknown for me. To understand exactly what type of maintenance do they need. If it's not flooding, what do you need to do to keep that type of surface functioning and safe to use? Some of the other items, though, do overlap with things that we already do. The concrete pads is something we had started to do in lieu of asphalt surface. Not just to improve the rink, but it was under the umbrella of multi-season facility. So Dease Park is a good example of that. Permanent boarded rink on a concrete pad, but we've also integrated basketball into that as well. So now you have a 4 seasons asset that can also be programmed in the summer for rollerblading, other type of sports that can utilize the concrete surface. So that's just gotten started. We haven't actively been working to program other activities. But I think that's going to be part of the mentality of looking at these options. And then you get into the covered rink structures, which isn't a entirely new concept, but it's something that I think it was 2016 was the last time we really looked at pricing it out and giving it some consideration. That is an option that there's a financial component to it. It's linked with a concrete pad as well. However, it does bring a whole nother list of opportunities in the summer for outdoor programming and recreation, because now you have a covered space that is weatherproof, so you can do things inside of it that you can't plan for otherwise. So that's going to, I think, probably generate a bigger conversation that the covered structure is not necessarily an outdoor rink discussion. It's actually more of a change or equal of a change for summer programming and activities opportunities.
Right, so it would be a parks thing as a whole, not just a hockey or skating thing.
Parks thing, but also recreation and then events and the community partners. If you had some type, if you require a large space to perform your activity outside, but it needs to be protected from the elements, but it doesn't need to be inside of a building. I think there are a lot of activities out there that would possibly leverage a facility like that. So that'll be the interesting discussion. If we're talking about value, there'll be the cost of the asset, and they'll have some maintenance impacts to outdoor rinks. But it's the other opportunities that type of structure will bring, and what value does that give to the community.
The question that I had was about the rink hubs. That was an option that was also outlined. What exactly is a rink hub?
So the concept of a rink hub or a super site is condensing the number of ice surfaces you have into fewer locations. So possibly very few locations. So eliminate satellite. So it does, depending on, it changes how you're covering the city geographically. You could have them spread around, so they're spread around the city geographically, but they would only be at fewer locations. Maybe you'd have, right now we have 2 bordered rinks and a pond at our supervised sites typically. So a hub would be considering either growing from that, saying there'd be more ice surfaces there, or a higher standard of ice surface, say a refrigerated ice or a covered. So a hub could include all of these components into the assets that are located at those sites.
I guess we'll have to wait and see and learn more in December.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what the planning exercise brings forward and how that compares to the programming we already offer, which, again, it has been fairly well received when we've done our public surveys on outdoor rinks. The community has been very positive about the service level that they currently provide. So comparing that type of response to the opportunities that these types of changes would bring is going to be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I know there's a couple boarded rinks in my neighborhood, and there's always someone there, it seems. So, yeah.
Definitely. And again, I think I think there's other opportunities that we'd like to see explored for increasing awareness, promoting use of them, helping people coordinate, use them. I think that's kind of a part of it too, sort of bring back the culture of community rink use. Right now, it's all very passive, right? Everyone, those that are out there using them and using them in an organized way, they're doing that entirely on their own, and that's great. But that's always been something that I've seen as once we get past the operational work to make the ice as good as we can, land on the right number of sites throughout the city and get that in place, I think then you can take that to the next level when it comes to communications.
Cory, appreciate you coming in today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Cory Halvorsen is the manager of Parks and Open Spaces here in Thunder Bay. He joined me here in the Minutes studio. A big thanks for listening to the Minutes this week. Of course, if you want more information about City Council, agendas, or minutes, visit thunderbay.ca/council. And if you want to listen to past episodes or maybe provide some feedback, visit thunderbay.ca/theminutes. You can also find the Minutes wherever you get your podcast. Plus, you can find us on YouTube and our website as well. That's thunderbay.ca/theminutes. If you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening at City Hall, just hit that subscribe button. I'm Jeff Walters. Thanks for listening this week. We'll chat again in 2 weeks. Make it a great day.